Chapter 5 Smoke. Early in my life, I learned to eavesdrop. I was driven to this ignoble practice because people seldom told me anything worth knowing. My attendants were trained to speak in elaborate flatteries. My father's wives avoided me. King Drupad only met me in settings designed to discourage uncomfortable questions. Dhri never lied, but he often kept things from me, believing it his brotherly duty to shield me from unpleasant facts. Though Dhaima had no such qualms, she had the unfortunate habit of mixing up what actually happened with things that, in her opinion, should have occurred. Krishna was the only one who told me the truth, but he wasn't with me often enough. So I took to eavesdropping and found it a most useful practice. It worked best when I appeared engrossed in some mindless activity, such as embroidery, or pretended to sleep. I was amazed at all the things I learned in this manner. It was how I discovered the sage. The siren Dhri was braiding my hair in the 5 rivers design when I heard one of the maids say in a squeaky, excited whisper, "And he promised I'll be married on full moon day in the month of Shravan." So, Dhaima responded scathingly from the next room, where she was setting out my clothes. Fortune tellers are always predicting weddings. They know that's what foolish girls want to hear most. That's how they get fatter fees. No, respected aunt. This sadhu didn't take any money. Also, he didn't just make vague promises. He said I'd marry a man who tends the king's animals. And as you know, Nandaram, who works in the stables, has been courting me. Didn't I show you the silver armband he gave me last month? It's a long leap from an armband to the wedding fire, girl. Come Shravan, we'll see how accurate your holy man was. Now set out that blue silk sari carefully and watch how you handle the princess's breastcloth. You're crushing it. But he told me about my past too, the maid insisted. Accidents and illnesses I had when I was a girl, the year my mother died, and what her last words were. He even knew about the time Nanda and I. Here her voice dipped shyly, leaving me to guess at details. You don't say. Dhaima sounded intrigued. Maybe I'll go see him, ask him if that good-for-nothing Kallu will ever change his ways, and if not, what I must do to be rid of him. What did you say the Babaji's name was? I didn't ask. Truth to tell, he scared me with a beard that covered his whole face and glittery red eyes. He looked like he could put a curse on you if you made him angry. Princess, my siren Dhri said, bowing, your hair is done. Does it please you? I picked up the heavy, silver-backed mirror while she held another one behind my head. The 5-stranded braid hung glossily down my back, sparkling with gold pins. I could smell the fragrance of the amaranths woven into it. It was beautiful, but it only made me dissatisfied. What use was all this dressing up when there was no one to admire me? I felt as though I were drowning in a backwater pond while everything important in the world was happening elsewhere. What if the prophecy at my birth was wrong? Or what if prophecies only became true if you did something about them? I decided that I'd accompany Dhaima to the holy man. Absolutely not, Dhaima exclaimed. Your royal father will have my head. Or, at the very least, my job, if I take you outside the palace. Do you want your poor old nurse to starve by the roadside in her old age? You won't starve, I said. Kallu will take care of you. Who? That no-good drunkard? That... Besides, I interjected deftly, my father doesn't have to know. I'll dress up as a servant maid. We can just walk to... You! Walk on the common road where every man can look into your face? Don't you know that the women of the Panchal royal family are supposed to remain hidden even from the gaze of the sun? You can get me a veil. It'll protect me from men and sunshine, both at once. Never. I was reduced to pleading. Please, Dhaima, it's my one chance to know what my fortune holds. I can tell you what your fortune holds. Severe punishment from your royal father, and a new Dhaima, since this one's life will be prematurely terminated. But because I was the closest thing she had to a daughter, or because she sensed the desperation beneath my cajolery, or maybe because she too was curious, she finally relented. Swathed in one of Dhaima's veils and a skirt several sizes too large, I knelt in front of the sage, touching my head awkwardly to the ground. My entire body ached. To get to the banyan grove where the sage was residing, we had to ride in a palanquin through the city, then cross a lake on a leaking ferry boat, then sit for hours on a rickety bullock cart. It taught me a new respect for the hardiness of commoners. I was startled by a rubble like a thundercloud. The sage was laughing. He didn't look too frightening. In his lined, crackled face, his eyes shone mischievously. Not bad for a princess. How did you know? I said, in chagrin. I'd have to be blind not to see through such a terrible disguise. At least the old woman could have given you some clothes that fit. But enough of that. Eager to learn your fortune, are you? Did you ever think how monotonous your life would be if you could see all that was coming to you? Believe me, I know. However, I'll oblige you both in some part. You first, old woman. He informed the delighted Dhaima that Kallu would perish soon in a drunken brawl, that she'd accompany me to my new palace after marriage, and that she'd bring up my 5 children. You'll die old and rich and cantankerous as ever, and happy, because you'll be gone before the worst happens. Sadhu Baba? Daima asked in concern. What do you mean by the worst? No more, he snapped, his eyes turning tawny, making her cower. Princess, if you want your questions answered, you must step inside the circle. I hadn't noticed the thin circle edged into the ground around him. Daima grabbed at my skirt, whispering about witchcraft, but I didn't hesitate. Inside the circle, the earth felt hot against my blistered soles. Brave, eh? He said. That's good, you'll need it. He threw a handful of powder into a small fire. A thick smoke rose until I couldn't see anything outside the circle. What's that? I gasped. Curious too, his voice was approving. I made it myself from resin and neem leaves and a few other select ingredients. It keeps the mosquitoes away. In the smoke, shapes, human-like, yet not human, rose and fell as though caught in a wind current. What are those? To my embarrassment, my voice trembled. Ah, that's the other thing the mixture does. Call up the spirits. You may ask them your questions. Far within the banyan grove, I heard a jackal howl. Coldness passed over my skin like ghost breath. For the last few days, I'd been longing for this moment. Why then did a strange reluctance silence me now? It came to me that I didn't trust the sage enough to reveal to him my secret desires. Later I would wonder, was it because of this lack of faith that the spirits answered me so obliquely in riddles that were more hindrance than help? Scared, princess? The sage taunted. Maybe you'd better step out and return to your safe palace. No, I cried. Ask your spirits if I will get what I desire. A smile, feral or condescending, glinted through the sage's beard. And do you even know what that is, child? Stung, I retorted. I'm no child, and I do know what I want. I want to leave a mark on history, as was promised to me at my birth. Very commendable, but there are other things, perhaps unknown to you, that you crave more. No matter, the spirits will see into your heart and answer accordingly. He clapped his hands and the spirits swirled faster. Yellow whispers came to me through the smoke. You will marry the 5 greatest heroes of your time. You will be queen of queens, envied even by goddesses. You will be a servant maid. You will be mistress of the most magical of palaces, and then lose it. You will be remembered for causing the greatest war of your time. You will bring about the deaths of evil kings and your children's and your brothers. 1,000,000 women will become widows because of you. Yes, indeed. You will leave a mark on history. You will be loved, though you will not always recognize who loves you. Despite your 5 husbands, you will die alone, abandoned at the end, and yet not so. After the voices fell silent, I sat stunned. Much of what they said, the part about 5 husbands, for instance, confused me. The rest filled me with despair. "Oh, don't look so dejected," the sage said. "How many women can claim to be envied by goddesses or become queen of queens? I don't want them if it means the other parts will be true as well. What good is it to own the most wonderful palace in the world if I'll have to lose it? And all those deaths. I refuse to be the cause for them, especially these." "You don't have a choice, my dear." "I'll enter a hermitage. I'll never marry." His crooked teeth flashed. "Destiny is strong and swift. You can't trick it so easily. Even if you hadn't come seeking it today, in time it would have found you. But in your case, your own nature is going to speed its process." "What do you mean?" "Your pride, your temper, your vengefulness." I glared at him. "I'm not like that. Even the wisest don't know what's hidden in the depths of their being. But here's something to console you. Long after you're gone, men will remember you as the most amazing queen this land has seen. Women will chant your name to bring them blessing and luck." "Much good that'll do me when I'm dying alone, tortured by guilt," I said bitterly. "Men might value fame above all things, but I'd rather be happy." "You'll have happiness too. Didn't you hear the spirits say you'll be loved? Besides, I have a feeling you'll grow to feel differently about fame." His jocularity angered me, but I controlled myself because I needed his help. "I've heard that great seers have the power to change the future they foretell. Please, can't you shape mine so that I don't harm those dearest to me?" He shook his head. "Only a fool meddles in the great design. Besides, your destiny is born of lifetimes of karma, too powerful for me to change. But I'll give you some advice. 3 dangerous moments will come to you. The first will be just before your wedding. At the time, hold back your question. The second will be when your husbands are at the height of their power. At that time, hold back your laughter. The third will be when you are shamed as you had never imagined possible. At that time, hold back your curse. Maybe it will mitigate the catastrophes to come." He poured water on the fire, extinguishing it with a hiss, a signal for me to leave. But then, glancing at my unhappy face, he said, "You've borne the harshness of the prophecies well, so I'll give you a parting gift, a name. From now on, you'll be known as Panchali, spirit of this land, though in your wanderings you'll leave it far behind. He turned to a thick book made of palm leaves and opened it. What are you writing? I couldn't help but ask. He ran a hand through his thick mane, exasperated. The story of your life, if only you'd stop interrupting it. And of your 5 husbands, and of the great and terrible war of Kurukshetra that will end the 3rd age of man. Already you have kept me from it for too long. Go now. Done so quickly? Daima asked. He didn't have much to tell you, did he? What do you mean? Why, you barely stepped in, then stepped out. I'm glad though. She dropped her voice as she pulled me toward the waiting cart. These sages with their sorcery, you never know what they might do to a young virgin. Inside the sages' circle, had time taken on a different gait? I climbed onto the cart, too preoccupied to feel its jolts. I peered through the shadows of the banyan one last time. The gloomy light played tricks on me. It seemed that there were 2 figures sitting inside the circle. One of them was the sage. The other, why, he appeared to have an elephant's head. The cart lurched away before I could point him out to my nurse. What did he say? Daima was all curiosity. Nothing bad, I hope. You look so solemn. I knew this heat would be too much for you. Remind me to get you some green coconut water when we go through the bazaar. I pondered what to tell her. He prophesied that I'd have 5 husbands, I said finally. 5 husbands? She slapped her forehead in disgust. Now I know he's a fake. Why, in all my years, I've never heard of a woman with more than 1 husband. You know what our Shastras call women who have been with more than 1 man, don't you? Though no one seems to have a problem when men sleep with a different wife each day of the week. Can you see your royal father, proper as he is, ever allowing something scandalous like that? I hoped she was right. If that part didn't come true, then perhaps the others wouldn't either. Daima heaved a sigh. He probably made up the bit about Kallu dying too. I'll probably be the one to perish first. The way that man tortures me day and night. What a waste of time this was. Oh, my aching back. Wait till we get back to the palace. I'll give that maid a box on her ear that she won't forget for the rest of her life. Each night I thought of my name. Already I had insisted that everyone address me by it. Princess Panchali, a name strong like the land, a name that knew how to endure. It was what I'd been waiting for. No matter what else came to pass, I always would thank the sage for giving it to me. I thought also of the palace the spirits had promised me. Most magical, they had called it. I wondered how I would ever gain such a palace. I didn't want to contemplate the other prophecies. They were too disheartening, but they knocked against my heart. I understood suddenly the unspoken questions the spirits had answered. Who would I marry? Would I ever be mistress of my own home? Would I find love? Were these the kinds of desires hidden in my heart? How puerile were they? Things my maids might have wanted. Was I then no better than the women who surrounded me, wrapped in the cocoons of their unimaginative lives, not even knowing enough to want to escape? It was a mortifying thought. Other nights I considered the mystery of the book the sage showed me, the story of my life. How could such a book be written before I had lived the incidents it described? Did this mean I had no control over what was to happen? Surely it wasn't so. Otherwise, why did he take the trouble to warn me? I didn't speak to the sage again for many years, though I heard of him from time to time. I learned his name, Vyasa the Compendious, because of the many hefty books he had written. Vyasa the seer, born on a dark island of a union between an ascetic and a fisher princess. On my wedding day, I would see him in the marriage hall, seated on my father's right, his placement revealing an importance I hadn't guessed at. He'd gaze at me, blinking mildly, as though he had never seen me before. When I'd make my first great mistake, his expression would remain unchanged, so that I wouldn't realize the enormity of what I had done until it was too late. Later, among my wedding gifts, I'd find a wooden box. When I'd open it, a familiar smell, wild and bitter, would rise from the powder inside. I'd use it in Khandar and later in the Kamyak forest. Thrown on fire, it warded away insects, just as he had promised, and nightmares as well. On those nights, my rough bark bed seemed softer. But no matter how much I called for them, for by now I had other, wiser questions, the spirits did not return to me again.